Hello and welcome back to the Expansion Room. I am your host, Shervon Laurice, and this is where inner work meets impact. Today, I am joined by a special guest, and we will be talking about his framework in working with conscious leaders and helping them to get unstuck. Mitch Weisburg is an educator, innovator, and systems thinker who has spent decades exploring how people learn, grow, and collaborate. He developed the four pillars of conscious leadership model as a framework to help leaders move beyond reaction, fear-driven patterns, and fear-driven decision-making to step into more expansive, empowered ways of being. These four pillars help to shape how we lead, how we respond to challenges, how we access deeper wisdom within ourselves. So welcome, Mitch. Can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself briefly and how you came to develop this model?
Sure. And I just have to object to your saying I've spent decades. I'm only 25 years old. So how could I possibly have spent decades doing this, right?
My bad.
Okay. Okay. So now that we have that established, so I've done a lot of things. I'm obviously not 25. I'm actually 72 years old, and I guess for a number of time, I've been looking around, and it's just so frustrating seeing people um, unmotivated,
Mm,
angry, anxious, feeling like they're not being heard, losing agency, going into kind of blame mode. And it's like, I just feel like we're not moving forward as a world, as a country, as a society, with so many
mm,
people feeling like that. And so um I hate just seeing a problem and just like not doing anything. So I
yeah.
started doing a lot of research, like how do successful people actually navigate that? How do they make sense of situations in a way that allows them to succeed and be happy? And basically, I've had a good life. Um, I'm happy. I have a good family. I feel like I'm doing a lot. I've done a lot. Why can't everybody have that same experience? And especially, why can't we bring kids up to automatically be able to do that? And
Yeah.
as I was looking over material from a lot of different sources on how do you sell, how do you manage, psychology, cognitive science, military strategy, coaching, all these different fields, seemed to me like it's a matter of understanding how to use your brain, and so I called it mind shifting. And the way I broke it down, and again, none of this is from me. This is all from people who are a lot smarter, who've done a lot more work than I have. I just tried to pull it together. But I saw like there's three different elements to that. And the first is being able to recognize, how your brain is working. Are you in a reactionary mode? Are you in a survival mode? Is your what psychologists would call your limbic system controlling how you're reacting to situations? And if you are, how do you recognize that? How do you calm down that fight, flight, freeze reaction? Flush the stress hormones out of your brain so that you can be resourceful, you can be empathetic, you can be exploratory, you can be curious, you can be innovative, you can align what you're doing to your higher level goals. So that first element is what I call resourcefulness, which is really how do you control your own brain in order to be happy and successful. And then the second element is how do you react to all the things that happen to the situations, because our
Mm,
brains are primed to think that a problem occurs and there's one right solution. Anything else is wrong. Once we have that solution, anybody who challenges it is just stupid. or lazy,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Right.
so they're wrong. And we're going to do that one thing. It's going to fix the problem, and then we can go on. And none of that ever happens. So, how do you prepare to meet situations so that instead of regarding what you're doing as the only approach, to say, well, wait a minute, this is a possible approach and I'm going to be doing this, it's probably not going to solve the problem, kind of preparing for failure. It's
Mm-hmm.
probably not going to solve the problem, but information is going to come back to me. And so when the information comes back, how do I use that information in order to get better and take the next step rather than blame the situation, the other person, myself, to give up, to get angry or whatever? How do you become resilient? So that second element is really about resilience. And then the third element is that we're always going to be working with other people. The human race has become like the alpha race on the planet
Mm-hmm.
because we're so able to work together. We've learned from each other. We build civilizations, we build technology, we build societies, villages. We do that because we're capable of working together. But when people cross us, when people don't do what we think that they should be doing, when people disagree with us, when people try to compete with us, when we don't like another person, our natural reactions tend to make the situation worse. Maybe some of our natural reactions, like rewarding and punishing people, maybe they can have a short-term positive effect, but over the long term they lose their effect and very often also make the situations worse. And yet there's research from 50, 60 years on how do you approach situations that are potentially confrontational and turn them around so that either you're collaborating because your values end up you end up finding how you can connect over values, or you just realize something, we disagree but we can come up with something that works for both of us so we can still move forward. And so how do you use those different techniques in order to turn conflicts, maybe you keep them as conflicts, but turn them into constructive conflicts rather than destructive conflicts. And
Mm-hmm.
so I built initially a 2-day course around mind shifting with those three elements. That course seemed to hit a nerve with people. And then I started expanding it and it got to be too long. So I've broken it into 3 different courses. And, my thought is like, what if what if we could have a critical mass of people who could all be collaborative, they could all be resourceful, they could all be resilient, and that critical mass of people could lead all of us forward. They could be the model that we all follow. They could lead us to solve all these issues that we have. And so, what would that critical mass of people consist of? And I kind of arbitrarily came up with a number of 5 million. 7 billion people on the planet. What if 5 million people could be collaborative, resilient, and resourceful? Wouldn't that be great? And then it's like, well, how do I do that? And I have no idea. Okay. I have 3 different courses. I figured, something, let me focus in on the teachers because the teachers teach the kids. And if the next
Mm-hmm.
generation could grow up having these skills, that would be fantastic. So currently I teach teachers in 2 states, and the courses are free for educators in New York and in the state of Washington. And I'm teaching one of the classes starting next week, and we closed it off at 100 participants, and there's a wait list of like 40, but I just can't teach any more than that at a time. So it's
Wow.
it's a step in the right direction, but it can't be the only step because that still is a slow way of reaching 5 million people. So I go on podcasts, I talk to people like you who are also doing the work in maybe slightly different ways, but there's more than one way to do this, and we all can work together. And so
Absolutely.
somehow or other, our goal is to help people so that we can help the world, because when we all do better, we all do better. Period.
Absolutely. And amen to that. I think the goal of touching 500 people's lives with this kind of work, who are also then bringing that work out into the world, it reminds me of what people talk about in finance of compound interest,
Oh, right, right. Yep,
right?
yep. Hmm.
Yep. Because I truly believe that whole people heal the world.
Right.
So when
And you
we
want me
do the
to
work,
mansplain compound interest to you?
not at all. I totally get compound interest. But yeah, it's one of my favorite things. It's like,
Right.
oh man, that's amazing how that works. But that's how this works, right? When
Right.
we do the work on ourselves, we then affect the people closest to us in our lives. And they affect the next set of people, the next line of people. And if you're teaching teachers, man, they have a huge impact on the world,
Right.
right?
Right. Yep.
So many levels, so many levels. And so, yeah, I think you could get to that 5 million.
That's my goal. And I don't, I'm not going to do it myself, but I can reach some
Right.
people and they can reach their people and they can reach their people. And
Absolutely.
really, so my, I don't know, philosophy or my way of being is like, I firmly believe that we are all connected. So when
Yeah.
somebody is miserable, their being miserable affects all of us. When somebody transforms themselves from being miserable to being happy, that then
Mhm.
accrues to all of us also. And so, I'm helping other people, yes, but it's
Mhm.
not like I'm helping other people. By helping other people, I'm helping myself because we're all connected.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for putting that out into the space. So, mind shifting is this inner pivot that changes everything, right? And so I would love to dive into each of those three pillars,
Hmm.
supporting it. And I will be your guinea pig in this.
Okay. Well, so we could start with resourcefulness, okay,
Okay.
and because that's the courses go. Resourcefulness is the first course, resilience is the second course, and conflict and collaborations is the third course. So the resourcefulness is about really focusing on your own brain, and a lot of it is based on uh, it's an oversimplification of the brain because the brain may be the most complex organism in the universe,
Hmm.
trillions of connections, but
Yeah.
and so to oversimplify it, we look at the brain in this sense as having two different parts. There's a part that started evolving with the first organisms that started having brains, and that part is the survival parts of the brain. People call it the lizard brain, the
Mm-hmm.
survival brain. Scientists call it the limbic parts of the brain. And that part of the brain is primarily concerned with survival. And you think about survival, you want to detect a threat really quickly and take action and avoid
Mm-hmm.
it or counter it somehow or other. And that part of the brain wakes up to stimulus in like 2, 3 100ths of a second, and then it goes through the things that it knows how to do and it comes up with what to do, and in a second, maybe 2 seconds, it's come up with, oh my gosh, this is a threat, this person is saying something and they're attacking me, this I didn't get this promotion, and so bad things always happen to me, I should quit my job, whatever it is, it comes up with a strategy based on 5 different types of actions. The first three that everybody hears about all the time is fight. I'm going to fight against this. Flight, I'm going to run away. Or freeze, I'm just going to avoid. I'm going to do nothing. And
Mm-hmm.
then it also looks for things that you already know how to do well. So your limbic brain, you like when you're walking, it's your limbic brain because you don't have to think about walking. You can just walk, and you can think, you can talk to somebody else. You can look at the scenery. You can drive, and half the time you drive me someplace, you don't even realize how you got there because you were thinking about
Exactly.
something else. So that's
Mm-hmm.
your limbic brain using things that are your habits or your fluencies, so that you don't have to you don't really have to really think about that. And then the fifth type of action is, especially in humans, but other animals as well, is we copy or we mimic what other people are doing in our crowd. And so if we're Republicans, okay, and we're hanging around with people who have a certain view of the world, we're going to mimic their view of the world. And people
Mm-hmm.
who think differently, we're going to be against. If we're liberals or if we're Democrats, we're going to be naturally hanging around with people who are liberals and Democrats, and we're going to mimic them. If we're
Mm-hmm.
scientists, we're going to hang around with other scientists. If we're um, wealthy, maybe we're hanging around with more wealthy people. So we're copying the people who we view as our tribe. We're doing things that are habitual, which sometimes cross, are also the things that are the rest of the tribe is doing, and or we're doing things that are fight, flight, freeze, which could be habitual also. And our limbic brain comes up with the things that it wants to do in about a second. Well, the other part of the brain is what I would call the resourceful parts of the brain, or the sage brain, or that's again an oversimplification is that that's mostly residing in the prefrontal cortex, that like right
Mm-hmm.
here in your brain.
Uh-huh.
That prefrontal cortex, or your resourceful parts of the brain, that wakes up in 2 to 3 seconds. And that's the part of the brain that allows us to critically think. It allows us to be curious, innovative, to really connect with other people, to be empathetic, to align what we're doing with what we really want to do with our values. But if it's not waking up until 2 to 3 seconds, and our limbic part of the brain have come up with something to do in a second,
Mm-hmm.
then it's actually being told, I've decided to do this, justify it. And so, in general, we're using that prefrontal cortex to justify the things that we've emotionally made the decisions to do. And so, you ask a person, "Why did you go to this college? Why did you choose this place to live? Why did you bully this other child?" And they'll come, they'll come up with a reason, but that reason isn't the reason that they're doing it. They're doing it because the limbic system went through its 5 different things and said, this is what we should do because this is a threat, or this is what other people are doing. And now your prefrontal cortex is coming up with a rationalization. If we try to counteract that ourselves, or especially if other people say, well, wait a minute, you shouldn't be bullying, or you shouldn't, there's no reason for you to be accumulating all this money. Okay. Then we're going to be picking that up as a threat, and we're going to be or that other person is going to be picking up as a threat, and they're going to be reacting from fight, flight, or freeze, and they're going to be flooding their brains with hormones. And when they're in that limbic mode, they are not able to take into account new pieces of information. They're not able to react to reasoning because they're
Mm-hmm.
in this fight, flight, freeze mode. And so in the resourcefulness, it's like, how do we recognize when we're in limbic or saboteur mode?
Okay.
And when our brains are being flooded by stress hormones, so we're not able to think. But so the first step is, how do you recognize it? The second step is, how do you quiet it? And you can, you quiet it, sometimes just recognizing it, you can quiet it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you can talk to yourself and ask yourself some questions to quiet it. Sometimes you could be mindful, like you could say, something, I'm just going to take a break, or I'm going to do some meditation, or I'm going to go walk in nature, or I'm going to talk to another person who I really like, or I'm going to play a sport, or I'm going to listen to music. But something to distract our minds for a minimum of 30 to 90 seconds, so the stress hormones can be washed out. And then how do you then become resourceful, which is, to be able to think critically, to be innovative, to and connect with other people. And so that's really that resourcefulness part. Um,
Okay.
and
And would you say that in that 90 seconds, if someone is doing this work regularly, they're able to step in and check in with themselves and notice this is the state they're in, that they have practices at the ready to go in, basically be resourced to shift their mind state.
I think so, but I'm going to turn it back to you, because you do this work with people all the time, also,
Mm-hmm.
and I can just see, just in your whole countenance, and like, you basically have it. So you probably feel that yourself, and you probably see that in in the people that you work with, that as you work with them, they become better and better able to do that self-awareness, and to be able to flush those stress hormones out of their bodies so that they can be resourceful, right?
Yeah, a lot of the work I do centers around like mindfulness practices. It's the
Hmm.
noticing when your body is begun to be activated. And a lot of people don't realize that it starts, some steps back, right? If you can pay attention, you'll notice either your shoulders raise, your palms get sweaty, or you curl your fingers, or your heart starts beating, right? Or your breath becomes shallow. Those kinds of things. So I've taught people to notice those things first so that
Which is
they can
wonderful.
then
Yeah.
make a different decision. Yeah.
And if you don't notice those things, probably what you're thinking is that what you're thinking is true. But when
Yes.
you start to notice
Yes.
those things, you start to realize that what you're thinking is just a story, and you can rewrite it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. And then the resilience?
And the resilience. So the resilience, it is starting to is really how you react to situations so that you're not immediately blaming. And of course, that's very much related to the resourcefulness, because when you're in limbic mode, you are just reacting. And,
Mm-hmm.
and when things go bad, it's like, well, this is a threat. And so you're blaming something, you're blaming the situation, you're blaming yourself, you're blaming another person, you're getting angry, you're getting anxious. So in resilience is, how do you prepare for situations so that you're more responsive instead of reactionary?
Yeah.
And even if you are reactionary, how do you recover? So in resilience, uh, we use we use actually two different methodologies. One. So Dave Snowden is a Welsh individual who came up with the first one. And if I said methodology, he would say, no, it's a framework. And if I I guess what he calls the Cynefin framework, which is Cynefin, the Cynefin framework. And in his framework, first of all, you look at situations not as generally having one right answer, although there are certain, I'm thirsty right now. Okay, here's my water.
Mm.
There's really one answer, one thing to do. But to understand, you break it down that there's really four different types of situations. One type of situation is this simple one, obvious, what to do. A second type of situation is what he would call complicated. And in a complicated situation, you probably need more information. An expert can say what to do. Very often in complicated situations, there's some analysis you have to do. And very often there's more than one way to do it. There may be trade-offs, but there's more than one way to get to the end result. So I guess when you're making something, you're building a house. If you went to five different architects, they would come up with five different designs. Now you may decide, well, this one gives me more living space, so I want this. Somebody else may decide, well, this one gives me a bigger dining room, I want to entertain more. So there's trade-offs that you could make, but basically any of those designs would work really well as a house. And in complicated situations, you don't handle them by making a decision right away. You handle them by saying, what information do I need? What expertise could help me right now? What are some um, what are some different alternatives? What are the trade-offs? And then it becomes not such a matter of picking the best solution, because there is no best solution. It's much more important to have everybody aligned on the same solution. So you can't, if you're looking at a house, and let's just say let's say that there are four people involved with buying the house. You couldn't have one person say, oh, we're going to go with this design, and another person with the second design, and another. It's, like but nobody has to fight about theirs, because it's not like one is better than the other. What
Right.
matters most is, let's just go behind one of the designs so we can have a place to live. And it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to meet most of our needs. So there's complicated situations. Then there's novel or new situations, which he would call complex. And in complex situations, because they're new, nobody knows the right answer. And as a matter of fact, in those situations, experts could be the worst people to go to make the
Mm,
decision, because the expert is really well versed in one way of handling a problem. So
absolutely.
every problem becomes a nail and you are a hammer, right? Uh, so,
Yeah.
so in those situations, instead of looking for a good solution that you all can agree on and work together on, what you're looking to do is to try different things so that you can get better information and you can move forward and see what's working and
Yeah.
what's not working. And so
Mm,
it's in those situations, it's really a matter of how do we find different things to try that will give us great information, and by trying them, we're not going to be hurting ourselves. And
absolutely.
I think that if you look at the way uh, um, as a country or countries we handled COVID, it was as if we were treating it as an expert with the one right decision, but nobody really knew what, was COVID.
Right.
Was it something that was transmitted in the air? Was it whether you were inside or outside?
Mm,
Um, should you wear a mask? Should you not wear a mask? Should it be a certain type of masks? And are vaccines going to stop you from ever getting it? Is vaccines going to stop you from giving it to somebody else? We didn't know any of those questions, and yet the experts were saying you have to do this, and then a month later it's
right.
like you have to do this. This is the science. Well, wait a minute. Didn't you say a month ago that it was the science that we should be doing that? Why are you saying we should do this? And then they became locked into their positions and really stopped doing the research to figure out what could work, because they didn't want to look wrong again.
Yeah.
So we closed schools for much too, maybe we should never have closed schools, but it would be okay to say, we don't really know what we're doing. We should, let's try closing the schools. But then you get the data and say, kids don't get this, and teachers can take steps that they can protect themselves. So we don't have to close the schools. We certainly don't want to close the playgrounds, because kids need to be outside and they need to be talking to each other and socializing with each other. So we very often treat things that, an expert's going to tell us what to do and there's one right problem. But in complex situations, the idea is you're going to try different things and maybe imagine how they're going to go. So
Mm,
with resilience, one of the things that one of the tools that I recommend is something called the three stories. So you're considering a situation and you come up with three stories, like, okay, so here's a situation. It's complex. I don't really know what's going to happen, but if I did this and things turned out right, let me walk through from today to it being solved. How did that work? And the process of walking through those steps, you can very often, say, oh my gosh, I thought I was going to do this, but that obviously isn't going to work. Well, what if I do this instead? So the first
right.
story is walking yourself through how you would get to the point where if you did something, it solved the problem. The second thing is to walk yourself through a second story is, well, what if I did this and then it turned out that the problem wasn't solved, maybe even got worse? Why did it not work? And so you're forcing yourself to do what people call a pre-mortem. You're imagining
Yeah.
that the project died, and now you're trying to figure out, well, why did it die? And in the process of doing that, you'll come up with, well, maybe I should do something different, or maybe what I should do um, is build in possibilities. So if I see this happening, I can take another step. And then, so that's the second story. And then the third story is, what if I do this? What's something completely unexpected that could happen that could throw things off? Because unexpected things happen all the time, right?
Mhm.
So you're thinking, like, what's something that I never would have expected could happen that could happen, and then how could I react to it? Now, in all likelihood, whatever it is that you're imagining is not going to happen. It's unexpected, and you wouldn't expect it to happen. But by imagining something unexpected, you're going to give yourself more resilience so that when something unexpected happens, you're prepared that, oh my gosh, it wasn't what I imagined, but this is unexpected also, but I'm already prepared to, how am I going to react to this?
Yeah.
So one of the techniques of resilience is that three stories technique that I think is a good way of imagining and giving yourself resilience for different events.
I think that's a lovely way to do it. In working with clients that I've worked with, we use something similar to start the day and to end the day. So you have whatever work schedule, life events when you wake up in the morning. Instead of hopping out of bed, grabbing your phone and being on social media, visualizing how you want your day to unfold.
And
Right.
that's brilliant because
Right.
that's kind of a rehearsal, right?
Yeah, it's almost
And
like a rehearsal.
yeah,
And then in the evening, then you go about your day, and it takes just a few minutes. And then in the evening, revisiting your day.
and that's your reflection, right?
That's the reflection. Yep.
Yeah.
And then you can also, in that revisit, reframe anything you feel like did not go exactly the way you wanted it to. So that in the next time you're in that situation, it plays out differently because you've already set it in your mind.
Oh, see, I thought you go through and find out what didn't work so that you could blame somebody. I'm
Yeah. That's
right,
usually how it works.
right. No, I think it's brilliant, right?
Yeah.
So imagining how the day is going to go is kind of a rehearsal, and that
Yeah.
prepares you because inevitably things are going to go a little bit differently, but you're much better prepared. Like, I'm going to have this conversation with this person, and it might blow up. As you're thinking, so what am I going to do to maintain my own equilibrium when they're doing things or saying things that are likely to normally trigger me? So you're rehearsing it, and then that sets you up for the rest of the day. And then at the end, you're kind of like, well, so what happened? Oh, something, I had this conversation with the person. It did go the way I wanted to, but the gift is that I learned so and so, or I got to practice
Hmm.
to do so and so, or something. I'm just going to congratulate myself because I didn't want to have this difficult conversation. I did it, and next time I'll do better. But I congratulate myself for actually taking the initiative and doing it. So that reflection is very
Absolutely.
important, right?
Absolutely. And then collaboration.
And then collaboration. So uh, so in collaboration again, we go into all these different situations, and so many people, we go to advise somebody, um, and we're offering them such great advice, and they immediately strike out at us. Like my wife could be saying to me, something, take out the garbage. And that actually is good advice. But if I'm like reading the paper, it's like she's criticizing me for reading the paper. Like, hey, why are you bothering me? Why don't you ever, so in collaboration is learning how to look at situations so that you don't get into this destructive confrontation that so often we end up with. And how do you approach situations in ways um, that both parties feel that their needs are being met? And I guess one of the early parts in conflict and collaboration is understanding that there's different styles that are possible to use in conflicts.
Hmm.
And we tend, as each of us tends to one or two different styles, but the more we know about the other styles, the more flexible we get. So just telling somebody to do something, telling somebody take the garbage out, or telling somebody do your homework now, or get to meetings on time, stop being late. That's what would be normally the competitive way of dealing with something, where you're telling somebody what to do and you're expecting them to do it. So the flip side of being the competitive person is you're expecting the other person to be accommodating. An accommodating
Right, right.
style is knowing what the other person wants you to do and doing it. And a lot of people, um, when you're overusing the accommodating style, you start getting down on yourself, right? You start thinking, why is it always me? I'm always the victim. I'm always doing this for other people, or this person is always telling me what to do, but but I have to do it because otherwise the relationship or my job or something like that is going to go out the window. So, but so accommodating, there are times to use accommodating, and there's times to use the competing. A third thing that we all do is avoid. Okay. And avoid could be
Absolutely.
procrastinating. Okay. It's like, I I need to have a talk with my son because my son um it has this is not the case, but my son has been unemployed now for 5 months and he's not looking for a job and he's throwing his life away. So, but you know something? I don't want to rock the boat. It's his life. I'm not going to say anything. Okay.
Hmm.
So there's times to use avoid. Okay. But we need to be conscious that are we using avoid because it's just seems to be easier and we're actually going to make the problem worse later on? Or are we using
Hmm.
avoid because things are really hot right now, or there's a time to use avoid? So that's there's compete, there's avoid, there's accommodate, and then there's collaborate and compromise. And in English, we often think of compromise and collaborate as synonyms because, hey, I'm compromising, so we're collaborating. But in systems theory, compromise is splitting the difference between two sides. So you're kind
Right.
of cutting the pie, right? So you
That's
know
right.
something, you want to do these four things. I want you to do these four things. Why don't we take two things from you and two things from me and we'll just move on? And
Yes.
sometimes that's just a fast way to resolve things and you can move forward, but nobody is fully satisfied. But
Yeah.
there may be more important things. So it's, sometimes that's good. In collaborate, that's where you spend the time and you think, well, okay, you want these four things. I want these four things. But two of those are really aligned. And maybe let's figure out how we can do all the things that you want, or most of them, and most of the things that I want. And maybe we can come up with something that's better than any of us could have had. And so
Hmm.
collaboration takes a lot more effort, and there's many cases where we it's not worth the effort, but collaboration is really where you get the commitment. All parties feel they have agency. All parties generally then feel really motivated. And um, in 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 the book and in the courses, the technique that I mostly recommend for doing that is something called motivational interviewing,
Ah,
which I'm
yes.
actually you use also, which is a
Yeah.
way of asking open-ended questions,
Hmm.
of active listening and confirming that all the parties are on board with what they're supposed to be doing.
Yes.
Um, and another aspect of collaboration is and conflict is to think, okay, so I'm about to have this. I'm really disagreeing with this other person. I don't agree with what they're doing. They're wrong. Is to be able to say, well, wait a minute. You know, my limbic system, my survival brain is very binary. Somebody is right and somebody is wrong. But in the real world, nobody is 100% right and nobody is 100% wrong. So
Hmm.
I disagree with them. I feel that they're 100% wrong, but what if they're only 90% wrong? What's the 10% that I can find that I can agree with? And then in talking to them, you could, if you can find that 10%, you can come back to them and say, something, what I like about what you said, and just by starting with what I like about what you said, just puts them in a completely different frame of mind than saying, no, we should do it this way. And so that technique of first questioning yourself is like, okay, I'm in limbic mode right now because I'm feeling that they're 100% wrong. Where might they be 10% right?
Yeah.
What could we agree with? What can I find to like about what they said? And then how do I utilize that so that we can connect and move forward. So that would be one of the tips in terms of collaboration.
There we go. Beautiful. And when you bring these tools together, how can you, I guess, using me as a guinea pig, and can we give the audience a snippet of how these three things can be used together if a leader or a business owner was in a particular situation and wanted to make a mind shift?
So, um, so to a certain extent, I think collaboration builds on resourcefulness and resilience.
Yeah.
So, which is why generally it's the third course. It should have been the third book, um, but it turned out, so it became the second book because when I was teaching that course, that's the course that resonated so much with people because everybody is feeling this divisiveness that we have, towards
Mm,
each other, and
okay.
um, and in the in so and in the when I teach the collaboration or in the book on conflict and collaboration, the first part of it goes over enough of the resourcefulness and the resilience so that you can start realizing, something, I'm part of the problem too. And so
Mm,
I can't expect, unless it's an emergency. If it's an emergency and somebody's doing something that's going to really hurt the company or it's going to hurt themselves, yeah, sometimes, or if it's a child, I may have to step in and say, no, this is, we have to stop this, or you
right.
have to do this. Okay. But then once that emergency is cleared, to go into a collaborative mode and to say, well, how am I also in limbic mode creating this program, but this problem, how can I first calm myself, and then I would say, in approaching this other person, how can I tap into, one of my sage powers, which, let's just say, how can I just be empathetic with this person? So
Hmm.
we don't have an emergency anymore. How can I first just make a connection with what type of questions can I ask them? How can I show them that I'm really concerned about them before we move towards what happened or what the problems are? So it's so the first part, I guess, it is, a getting yourself into resourceful mode. And then B, if you think that you have the one best solution to the problem, that also means that you're not approaching the problem as if it was complex. And virtually anything that involves people is complex because we don't know how the other people are going to react, and we don't know how their reactions are then going to change the system itself. And then as the system changes, that changes the people also. And I think one of the perfect examples of that is the way we're so concerned about measurement, and we apply that to schools, and we say, something, our schools aren't doing a good job, so let's just measure student learning. And so we start measuring student learning, and then we use that and say, well, something, let's just punish the schools, or let's punish the teachers when the students aren't learning. And so as the schools get punished and the teachers get punished, they're not stupid. They look at it and they say, something, this isn't about meeting the needs of the kids. If I want to keep my job, I have to get the test scores back up. So I'm going to do my
Yep.
work to find out what is it we're testing, and I'm going to ignore all the things about play, about collaboration, about
Yep.
creativity, because I have to get the kids' vocabularies up. So I'm going to drill and practice on vocabulary so that their verbal scores, their ELA scores go up. And so we twist the system. So the key with resilience is, how do you regard the situation as a complex one, understanding that you're going to be doing things for the purpose of getting information and that everybody needs to be on the same page. rather than we're going to do this solution and we're going to do this measurement and it's going to have this result. And if it doesn't work, it's because you guys are wrong and I'll just find new people. So I would say that would be the resilience part of it, is to understand that that almost any change that we want to make is going to involve people, and anything that involves people is going to be complex. And so we should be looking at experiments and valuing the information as information rather than using the information as the basis of reward and punishment.
Here we go. Wonderful. Okay.
And I'm not sure that answered your question, but I meant to. I tried to,
Yes,
but
it helps my brain formulate.
okay. So could you summarize that? Because I don't think I did a particularly good job in summarizing it, but I think you could, because you're there, you know all of this. So I think you could summarize it better than I did.
Yeah, I think it's when we find ourselves in a place, and maybe as entrepreneurs or conscious leaders, or even teachers in community, it's really, if there's this moment where we're kind of riled up about something, it's taking that pause and being in that space. And this is the resourcefulness, being in that space to pause and notice and kind of bring it all back down, and that space of resilience of, okay, it's there's not just one way for me to see this, right? And I think that too often, and we see it in our kind of polarization right now in our country,
Yep.
right? That everybody has their one way or their side or their way. And it's not just one way. It never has been on anything.
Yep. Yep.
And so coming back to the middle path, as the Buddha called it,
Mhm. I love that. I
right?
love that. Right.
Coming back to the middle path, and then turning towards the people that are in the situation and coming up with the solutions that need to be made, right? In that collaborative way that you were talking about. And looking at collaboration not as the struggle. I think there's so many people now that don't want to collaborate because they feel like and know that it's going to be hard work, and what's the point? I'm not going to get what I want anyway, right?
Hmm.
Being in that space of turning towards one another and doing the work anyway, because something good is going to come out of it
Right. Right. Yep.
every single
And
time.
motivational interviewing, you could do a session on motivational interviewing, or your listeners could look it up. I'm sure you use it in your own practice. It is such
Yeah,
an amazing tool for
yeah,
turning, I guess, conversations that could be very contentious into conversations that are just conversations where two people are exploring. It's not me against you. It
that's
becomes
right.
me and you working to solve this.
Yeah, yeah. They become lighter, warmer, more spacious, or more
Mhm.
open. It's almost the difference when I think about it visually. Motivational interviewing is like forming a circle, and
Wow.
the other way of of managing conflict is just jagged edges.
Wow. Yeah. Right. And
Yeah,
as you're saying that, it's such a good visual. Thank you. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Beautiful. Thank you. Two things. What would be, I guess, the last thing that you want to give the audience to kind of tie this all together?
Well, I'm going to say really two different things. One is an emphasis on yourself. It's like to understand, and you described how paying attention to whether it's your breath, whether it's your tenseness, whether it's your shoulders, that if you're sensing those signals, or you're related to that, you're sensing that you're sure of something, to understand that you are not in your resourceful mind,
Mm-hmm.
that you are in your survival, your lizard, um, your limbic system. And so then using some methodology on yourself to calm yourself down and getting into a mode where you're curious, that you're looking at something as fun, that you're aligned with your values. So calm yourself down and then, like, what do I really want? Or what
Mm-hmm.
would make this fun? Or if I'm really curious, how could I explore things? And so that would be number one. And number two, thinking about the other person, that they are probably also starting off in limbic mode. And when they're in limbic mode or survival mode, you can't reach them through logic or facts or orders. And so your first job is, how do you help them? How do you become a co-regulator with them to help them get into a regulated state, so that they are also in resourceful mode? And once you're both in resourceful modes, then you get what you described as this circle, which is such a perfect visual, and you can work together, rather than this jagged edges where, I'm right, no, you're right, no, I'm right. But where
Mm-hmm.
we often get in this destructive conflict. So thinking about those two parts, how do I myself as a leader, make sure that I'm in a resourceful state of mind? And then how do I help this other person to get in a resourceful state of mind before solutioning with them?
Yep. There we
That's what
go.
I'd like to leave people with.
Beautiful. Thank you. And where can people get in touch with you if they want to step into this kind of work or this course that you offer?
Mhm.
How can they get in touch with you?
So, so, well, I have a website, mindshiftingwithmitch.com. And through that website, you get links to a blog or newsletter that I write. There's two of the books out. The one on resourcefulness is out, which is Stop Your Brain from Sabotaging Your Happiness and Success. And the one on conflict and collaboration is out, which is Mind Shifting, Conflict and Collaboration. There's courses also that are accessible from the website. But I'll say that what I'm really, really interested in is the effect. I was just talking to somebody. It's not about the books. It's about how do we together, um, get this critical mass of people who are happy and productive. And so,
Mm.
look at my website. Feel free to try to get in touch with me. The newsletter comes out each week where there's one or two or three different articles where we're relating mind shifting. That's that, to things that people are doing. The newsletter is free. And if you want to do something with your organization or a group of people, we can help you with, like, a book study group, with materials to lead a book study group, to lead your own course. If somebody wants to bring this into their own practice, I'm happy to help somebody steal as much of my materials as you want to, if you're going to make a difference in the world.
There we go. Well, thank you for that. Mitch, I thank you so much for joining me on the expansion room. I really appreciate your time and sharing your work, this body of work, which is really important and can really shift the balance in the world. So yes,
Oh,
let's
thank you.
let's try to get to that 5 million. I like that
Let's
idea.
get there. Let's get
I
there.
think I
It's
think
it's
so.
such it really is so enjoyable for me to be talking with somebody and then have that person really express much better than I did what I was trying to express. And so I really enjoyed talking with you and listening to you
Oh,
come back with the things that I said, but say it in a much more elegant fashion than I ever did. So
oh.
thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And to my audience, thank you for sharing this episode and this time with us here on the Expansion Room. And I am hoping that in this conversation, you find something that you can take with you, add to your life experience, and add to your work. And if something resonated that Mitch shared, definitely go to his website, look into the work. It may be something that you can bring into your workplace or in your leadership. Until next time,